I had always thought my little cottage was a safe haven, a place of tranquility away from the bustling city life. Nestled deep in the woods, surrounded by tall pine trees and a serene lake, it had always been my sanctuary. But all of that changed on a chilly autumn night. The wind howled outside, sending shivers down my spine as I curled up on the couch, wrapped in a warm blanket. Rain tapped on the windows, creating a soothing lullaby that usually helped me drift into a peaceful sleep. However, that night was different. I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was wrong. I dismissed it as my imagination playing tricks on me. Perhaps the eerie darkness outside was making me paranoid. As I was about to close my eyes, I heard a faint creaking noise coming from the hallway. My heart raced, and I sat up, straining my ears to listen. "Hello?" I called out, my voice trembling. There was no response, only silence. The cottage felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. I knew I should have called the police, but my phone was charging in the bedroom, and the hallway was my only way to get to it. With trembling legs, I made my way to the hallway, clutching the blanket tightly around me. The dim moonlight filtered through the curtains, casting eerie shadows on the walls. As I walked, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every creak of the old wooden floorboard sent a shiver down my spine. I reached the bedroom and grabbed my phone, dialing 911. But just as the call connected, a gust of icy wind blew through the room, extinguishing the candle on my nightstand. In the darkness, I heard a whisper, a faint voice that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. "Leave." I froze, my breath catching in my throat. The voice was chilling, filled with sorrow and anger. It couldn't be real. It had to be my imagination playing tricks on me. But then, I heard it again, clearer this time. "Leave this place." I stumbled out of the bedroom, my heart pounding in my chest. I knew I had to get out of the cottage, but where could I go in the middle of the night, in the midst of a storm? As I hesitated, the voice grew louder, more desperate. "Leave now, before it's too late." Terrified, I rushed to the front door and flung it open. Rain poured down in torrents, and the wind whipped my hair around my face. I ran into the woods, not looking back, my cottage disappearing into the darkness behind me. For hours I wandered through the dense forest, guided only by the occasional flashes of lightning. The voice had stopped, but an overwhelming feeling of dread hung in the air. I couldn't understand what had happened. My peaceful haven had turned into a nightmare. Exhausted and drenched, I finally stumbled upon an old abandoned cabin deep in the woods. It was in shambles, but it offered some shelter from the storm. I pushed the door open, and it creaked loudly, as if protesting my intrusion. Inside, the air was musty and cobwebs hung from the corners. I could feel the weight of the past in every corner of the room. But it was dry, and it was a place to rest. I collapsed onto a dusty old couch, my mind filled with questions. As I lay there, I couldn't help but wonder about the voice. Who had spoken to me? Why had they told me to leave my own home? The events of the night replayed in my mind like a twisted nightmare. Morning light eventually filtered through the cabin's broken windows, dispelling the darkness. I decided to venture back to my cottage, convinced that I had overreacted to the storm and my own imagination. When I arrived, the sun had fully risen and the storm had passed. The cottage stood before me, just as I had left it. I cautiously entered, half expecting the eerie voice to return. But everything was quiet, and there was no sign of any intruder. Over the next few days, I tried to put the incident behind me. I rationalized it as a combination of exhaustion and fear, but deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Each night as I lay in bed, I felt a presence in the room, a shadowy figure that moved just at the edge of my vision. I couldn't ignore it any longer. I decided to do some research, hoping to uncover the history of the cottage and the forest that surrounded it. I discovered that the land had once been inhabited by a family in the early 19th century. Tragedy had struck when their young daughter, Emily, had gone missing in the woods and was never found. It was said that Emily's spirit still roamed the forest, searching for her way home. Some believed that she had grown angry over the years, blaming her family for her disappearance. As I read more about Emily's story, I couldn't help but feel a connection between her and the voice I had heard that fateful night. It was as if she had been trying to protect me, urging me to leave the cottage before her anger consumed me. Determined to find answers, I decided to visit the local library and speak with the town's historian. She told me more about Emily's family and the tragedy that had befallen them. She also mentioned that others who had lived in the cottage before me had reported strange occurrences, including whispers in the night and the feeling of being watched. Armed with this knowledge, I returned to my cottage, determined to make peace with Emily's spirit. I lit a candle and spoke into the darkness, addressing her directly. "Emily," I said softly, "I know you're here. I understand that you're angry and lost, but I mean you no harm. I just want to live in peace in this cottage. Please, if you can hear me, let us find a way to coexist." For a moment, there was only silence. Then, a faint breeze rustled through the trees outside. It was as if the forest itself had sighed in relief. The oppressive feeling that had hung over the cottage began to lift, and I felt a sense of calm wash over me. Over time, Emily's presence became less menacing, and I began to feel a strange kinship with her. I left offerings of flowers and candles in the woods, hoping to bring her some comfort. The whispers in the night became gentle, like a distant lullaby, and the feeling of being watched gradually faded. I came to accept that my cottage was not mine alone. It was shared with the spirit of Emily, a lost soul from the past. Together, we found a way to coexist, and the cottage once again became my sanctuary, haunted by shadows of the past, but no longer filled with fear. In the end, I realized that some places carry a history, and that history can leave a mark on the present. My cottage would always be haunted, but it was a haunting I could live with, a reminder that even in the most unexpected of places, there can be room for understanding and compassion.